Thank you for joining me for another Quick Hits conversation. Today I would like to talk about how do you know that your goals are actually your goals? Karen, go first.
You know, it's an interesting conversation just about goals in general, because we've all been trained on everybody needs to set goals. And if you think about it from birth, we have had goals. We need to walk, we need to talk, we need to do all this stuff. So goals are actually kind of ingrained in us, but some of us aren't really good about setting goals, measuring goals, and blah, blah, blah. And I think that that's how you kind of know, is when you start to measure how closely or how, have you reached that goal? And if we always talk about goals need to be measurable. And if your goal's not measurable and it's much more kind of loose based, then it's harder to know whether that's really your goal or just a goal of society, because I think that we are often kind of peer pressured and, into behaviors, into thought processes. And so it can be very, very difficult to determine what your goal is versus somebody else's goal. And I think that comes down to the individual and the strength and knowledge that your compass is pointing in the right direction. And that internal compass is what really guides you. But I think that the one thing I want to say about goals is that I think we get too wrapped up in the goal and not realizing that, hey, you can reroute if you want. If you're heading a direction that's not looking like your goal, reroute. That's okay. Nobody says you can't.
Yeah, I think there's a huge amount there. I totally agree with, particularly about really knowing, is it my goal or is it someone else's? And I was thinking about this and thought, from a psychology point of view, you would always prefer somebody's pursuing an intrinsic goal. I mean, I've been wanting to walk, it's pretty intrinsic. I want to be over there. And they just keep going at it. And if it's intrinsic to you, in other words, it's in line with your values and it's making you feel more competent and making you feel more connected with people, you're going to keep pursuing that goal. If it's someone else's goal and it gets a wee bit hard, perhaps the boss set the goal and it gets a bit hard, it's easy to see the enthusiasm wane a lot quicker than if it's really what you want to do.
So I think it's worth possibly drawing a distinction between goals and targets. Talking about if your boss set a goal and things like that. For me, that's your boss saying go in this direction, and you might have some performance metric or target around it. Goals for me are more personal, should we say? And I know this is going to be an unpopular decision, but view, but I really worry about goal setting. Everyone's advising everyone to set goals and stretch goals and that sort of thing. And you've kind of both said it in terms of you should be able to adjust your goals, but people aren't told that. You should aim, but you should also adjust. And if I don't feel I can adjust a goal or whatever I'm going for, it's probably somebody else's, and I should probably ignore it.
Yeah, this came up for me because I have a client who's in her 40s and she's just starting to realize that everything that she's achieved in her life was because it's what her father expected her to do. And now she's trying to figure out, well, who am I and what do I want and what does that look like? And the challenge she's having is that she still has that parental voice saying, well, you should, and how come, and this is what achievement looks like. And so she's trying to figure out, well, what are my goals as opposed to what society or my father or anyone else has expected me to be. And she doesn't really have that voice. How do you find that voice?
But I think that you brought up a really good point that I wanted to mention, is that there's a cultural foundation to this as well. Because you look at, here in the United States, arranged marriages are not a thing, right? And arranged marriages are typically about somebody else's goal, the family's goal, that kind of thing. And so as an individual, you just go along. But in the United States, we would never go for that kind of a thing. Even as second and third generations, you see that conflict that occurs when the family has a goal, but the individual has become Americanized per se.
And I think that voice, as you say, I thought there was a really important word you said there, Robyn, which is the should. When you should, you pretty well know it's someone else's. If it's then you know it's yours, and it's the voice that's saying want to. And I think for your client, I think the big thing is finding, as you say, getting rid of the word goal. I'm with you there, which I never thought I'd say as a coach. You're always doing goals, but it's the direction, it's the things that make you feel, and finding that thing that really is worth getting up for on Monday morning. That's the goal you want to do. Whereas a should and a ought, you're getting yourself out of bed on Monday morning because you have to.
I tell clients regularly,
The
stop
same.
shooting on yourself.
Yeah, why don't they just do what makes them feel good? You know,
And you know
stop
what?
doing
That's
it. Marie
an easy thing
Kono or
to
whatever.
say,
You know,
but how do you do that if you have all of this like duty and responsibility and all these layers? How do you find yourself under
But I
that?
think
so that's not goals.
we've talked a lot about personal goals, and I kind of shifted this a little towards that professional side a little bit, because there are two distinct things going on, and in my opinion, you kind of want to line up those a little bit, right? Your personal and your professional goals. And usually those professional goals start kind of in our younger years as far as a career direction that we're headed. And, you know, my parents' generation, the idea was that you were in that occupation your whole life. Well, that's not how it is today. So things have shifted.
Simon, you were saying that you feel like unpeeling those layers isn't about goals. Can you say more about that?
Clearly, your client or whoever, the issue is more about societal expectations, and they've lost themselves. And it'll be a bigger thing than just goals. It'll be the way they live their life, the way they dress. I would suspect, I'm no coach or psychologist, but I suspect it's more than about goals. And it might be, I was at a retreat once, and someone was doing a piece of work, and that involved writing down their life goals, putting them on a hay bale next to them, and then getting inside this whirligig thing and moving around and looking at the problem. And she did this for about 5 minutes and then said, I've got it, fine, I'm done. And got off the whirligig, picked up the goals and burnt them. And that was the release she needed. And I think that might be the starting point is to move towards realizing that you're not beholden to anybody else. And then only then can you start talking about what you want to do.
Yeah, I love the point that Rosie made about should, and if you're using the word should, it's probably somebody else's, and recognizing and then burning them. That's a great idea. Like just releasing yourself from all those shoulds, I think is a good way to recognize if your goals are your goals. And I think what we're saying is there's an emotional component here to being happy and feeling fulfilled.
Yes.
And I think it's really important that people got both. It's got to be fun to do, but a really meaningful goal isn't fun all the time. Some of the most meaningful things we do in life are pretty tough at times, but the satisfaction and the sense of purpose in life that those can bring you is a deep, long-lasting satisfaction. And so it's satisfying needs about expressing ourselves, as well as actually getting to be ourselves. And it's, if I was going to talk to your client, I would love to ask her what it is she wants. Her goal is to please her parents. What is it going to be next? And how is she going to put that want into a context now for her?
Yeah.
I think it's just as important to note that I recall a certain point in my career where I had reached what I thought was the pinnacle, and then I was kind of lost. And so that happens too to people who are so used to setting goals and reaching that eventually you go like, is this all there is just setting goals and reaching? And then when you don't have a goal, your life feels a little empty. At least that's how I felt.
It's a drug, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think we find the same, like you set sales guys targets. The only thing is to ratchet it up, and everyone knows it's a silly game. Really what you want is, are you doing the best with what you've got? Are you succeeding or winning? But not,
So that's our 10 minutes. I love the idea of goals being less about duty and more about happiness. I think that that's a great way to look at it. And I thank you so much for having this conversation with me. It's been very enlightening, and I look forward to doing it again very soon.